Ever feel like, the world's just spinning out of control, everything's changing, and it's like you're being left behind?
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today, the story of the Lakota Sioux back in the late 1800s.
Fascinating period.
Yeah, and the ghost dance movement.
Right. It's a really powerful story, a culture just trying to, survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the face of overwhelming change. I mean, imagine if everything you knew, your homeland, their way of life was just labeled barbaric.
Mm-hmm.
Your whole existence threatened.
Yeah, and we're taking a lot of this from the Rest is History podcast episode on this.
Great episode.
What really struck me was just the sheer scale of the change the Lakota had to deal with.
Oh, absolutely.
They're forced onto these reservations.
Right.
Traditional hunting grounds are just decimated.
Gone.
Way of life just essentially outlawed.
The Dawes Act of 1887, that was really a major turning point. The goal is to, break up tribal lands, assimilate Native Americans into white society.
Right.
And a lot of people saw that as basically a death sentence for their culture.
It's like that feeling you get in Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian.
Yes.
It's like everything's just falling apart.
World on the brink, yeah. And right into this, fractured world steps Sitting Bull.
Oh, yeah.
He's coming back from exile in Canada, this legendary figure, and finds his people just struggling to survive.
He must felt so powerless.
Oh, yeah.
Just watching everything crumble around him.
I mean, he even talks about it, feeling like a pitiful wretch, reduced to relying on government rations, influence fading. He even ends up participating in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show.
I know.
Can you imagine that?
It's so complex.
It is.
On the one hand, it's like exploitation. It's reinforcing these really bad stereotypes.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, was it a way for Sitting Bull to stay visible?
Possibly.
Like maintain some agency in a world that's trying to erase him?
That's a great question. You have to remember, for the Lakota, the buffalo wasn't just food.
Right.
This was central to their whole identity,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual and cultural. So when the buffalo herds are destroyed, it's not just like an ecological disaster.
It's a spiritual crisis.
Exactly.
And that's where the ghost dance comes in.
Yeah. This movement started by a Paiute prophet named Wovoka, and it offered this vision of hope.
Yeah, they thought things could go back to the way they were. The buffalo would come back.
The world would be cleansed. All the injustices they suffered would be wiped away.
The ghost dance was about so much more than just food.
Right. It was reclaiming their culture, their dignity, their whole existence.
And it clearly resonated with the Latino.
Oh, they were desperate for something to hold on to.
For any kind of hope. And the dance itself is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's this blend of traditional Native American beliefs and even some elements of Christianity.
Yeah, reflecting that complex reality they were living in.
Trying to adapt.
To survive in this new world.
But, clinging to their own core beliefs.
Absolutely.
But this vision clashed with the U.S. government's ambitions.
Oh, yeah.
President Harrison, he wants more Republican states, wants to expand
westward expansion.
And the Lakota land,
an obstacle.
Standing right in the way.
You got all this political maneuvering happening with real consequences for the Lakota.
And that's where this guy Daniel F. Royer comes in.
The Indian agent at Pine Ridge Reservation. He gets fixated on the ghost dance.
Yeah, why is that?
He sees it as a threat to his authority, a sign of rebellion.
But it was a peaceful movement.
It was a spiritual movement. But he starts sending these panicked reports to the government, exaggerating the threat.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Fueling this media frenzy.
Painting them as dangerous savages.
Exactly.
It's textbook misinformation. Fear-mongering.
Using existing prejudice to justify a crackdown.
Wow.
Yeah. And the government, they're already predisposed to seeing Native Americans as a problem.
Right.
They buy right into this. They decide to make an example of Sitting Bull.
Oh, no.
Who, because of his past and, his fame from that Wild West show, he becomes the face of this whole threat.
So sad.
It is. It's tragic how his attempts to just navigate this new world, to hold on to some kind of control, it made him a target. And on December 15th, 1890, they send Indian police, a lot of them Lakota, by the way,
right,
to arrest Sitting Bull. Can you imagine the tension?
Oh, like that?
The conflicting loyalties?
Yes, these Lakota policemen being ordered to arrest their own leader.
And as they approach his cabin, his supporters, they gather, tensions escalate.
Uh-oh.
And a shot rings out. No one knows for sure who fired it.
Oh, wow.
but it starts this chaotic firefight.
So it turns violent.
It does. And Sitting Bull is killed in the crossfire.
Oh, no.
Just a devastating blow to the Lakota.
Yeah.
A real symbol of their shattered hopes. But, it fuels the government's paranoia even more.
Yeah.
It confirms their view of the ghost dance as this dangerous uprising.
It's like their fear creates the violence they're supposedly protecting against.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then you have Spotted Elk, also known as Bigfoot.
Okay.
He's a Lakota chief, and after Sitting Bull's death, he decides to lead his band south to the Pine Ridge Reservation.
To that same place where Royer's been, stirring up all this fear.
Exactly. It just shows how desperate their situation was.
They have nowhere to go, no one to trust.
And it's on this journey that they run into the 7th Cavalry.
No way. The same one from Little Bayhorn.
The one and only.
Oh, wow. The ghosts of the past literally haunting them.
Now led by Colonel James Forsyth.
Okay.
They intercept Spotted Elk's band and escort them to a creek called Wounded Knee.
Wounded Knee.
A name that, well, it echoes through history.
Yeah. A place that will forever be associated with tragedy.
And it's chilling, right, how everything seems to be converging on this one spot.
Mm-hmm.
So on the morning of December 29th, 1890, the soldiers are trying to disarm Spotted Elk's band. And another shot rings out, and again, no one knows who fired it.
Oh, God.
But this shot unleashes just a torrent of violence.
The massacre.
The soldiers open fire with Hotchkiss guns.
What are those?
These incredibly powerful weapons, just mowing down the Lakota. Men, women, children, just slaughtered.
It's hard to even imagine.
Over 300 Lakota are killed, many while they're trying to escape.
That's just awful.
The 7th Cavalry claims they were provoked, but a lot of historians believe it was a cold-blooded massacre, the result of all that fear and prejudice, and a complete failure to understand the ghost dance and what it meant to the Lakota people.
Yeah, it's hard to grasp,
It is.
The sheer scale of the tragedy, all those lives lost, a whole culture just shattered.
Mm-hmm.
And what gets me is that the ghost dance, this peaceful, expression of hope,
Right.
is met with this brutal violence.
It's really a stark reminder of what happens when you have misunderstanding and prejudice.
Yeah.
I mean, the Wounded Knee Massacre became a symbol of the oppression Native Americans faced. It's a real turning point.
And it didn't really end the ghost dance, did it?
No. In a way, Wounded Knee made it even more powerful.
How so?
Well, it transformed it into this symbol of resistance, a reminder of all the injustices.
Right.
And, the memory of Wounded Knee is still with us.
Yeah.
It's still a call for, reconciliation and understanding.
I mean, this story, it brings up so many questions.
It does.
About power, culture,
Mm.
the dangers of misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
How could something like this happen?
Yeah.
How could a peaceful spiritual movement be seen as such a threat?
Well, it forces us to look at the impact of colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
how dominant cultures twist and demonize anything they see as different.
The Lakotas were just seen as an obstacle.
Yeah.
Their culture was seen as inferior, their beliefs dismissed.
It's a sad story. But why should we care about this today? I mean, this happened over a century ago.
Right. That's a good question.
I think it's because it's not just a historical event. It reflects challenges we still face today.
Like what?
Understanding other perspectives, challenging our own biases, fighting against prejudice and discrimination.
It's about seeing the humanity in everyone.
Exactly, even if they're different from us.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to their stories and working towards a more just and equitable world.
We started this whole deep dive with the Lakota Sioux,
Mm.
Feeling like the world was leaving them behind.
Hmm.
Their story is tragic, but it also shows the strength of the human spirit,
It does.
the power of hope, and how important it is to stand up for what you believe in, even when the odds are stacked against you. What will you take away from their story?